All right, guys, so we are at my friends Ben and Janelle's house, and they are throwing the 3rd annual Thrivalist Fair. They want to teach people how not only how to survive, but how to thrive. And they do a lot of different classes. They teach a lot of different skills, from small engine repair to soap making. And the best thing about this year is that Rosemary Gladstar is here. And if you don't know, she's a world-renowned herbalist. She has been taking us on herb walks, and we have been making herbal remedies and talking about mushroom foraging. It has been the best 2 days ever. I just feel really grateful that there are people that care enough about their communities to put on events like this, because Ben and Janelle do a lot of work to make this happen. There are probably 5 tents set up around their property right now where they are doing classes for people. Different kinds of classes, so you can kind of pick what you want. They do them over 2 days, and it is a lot of fun. So I am really thankful that they put themselves out there and go through all this work to be able to give this to the community. And guys, I met Rosemary Gladstar. I have walked around this property for like 5 hours with Rosemary in the last couple days, just looking at herbs and talking about them. And it has been like, it's been like the best 2 days that I've had in a long time. So I know my voice is kind of bad. I'm having terrible allergies, and I got no sleep last night, but I am here and I'm having a really good time. So I want to get my camera out and just kind of show you guys around and show you what's happening. Come on.
Any of these little hypodermic needles that are full of formic acid under these leaves and on this stem, I'm going to get a big sting from it, a big welt, right? So that's what it does. But the reason I love it is it's actually one of the most delicious greens. I know some of you are looking at me like I'm totally crazy, but it's one of the most delicious foraging foods, and it's actually become virally popular right now. Like if you go on the website and you look at recipes for nettle, you'll see like a zillion recipes. I like to think I'm partly the cause for that, because I've been preaching nettle for the last 50 years, right? But it's just such a delicious plant. And the part that you use, I'm going to get stung here, excuse me. The part that the most ideal part to use is these tender young tips. Ideally, we harvest it before it goes into seed. It's starting to seed. Those are the little flowers, and then those will turn into seeds. And those seeds, by the way, are really good for men. Also the root. The root and the seeds are being used medically for men who have prostate issues. There's some good research, like some really good scientific research on using the seeds and the roots for prostate issues in men. But back to cooking, away from the prostate. So we would pick the tender young greens, and then you just steam those. You'd cook them any way that you would spinach, right? Or chard or kale. The only difference is you want to cook them well. So you do not want to, like a lot of times I'll put a big bunch in a pot and steam it, and then I'll always stir it and steam it a little more because it packs down. You don't want to leave any of the formic acid in there. You get a big welt in your mouth. So steaming it just is a delicious green. If you have children or grandchildren who don't like their greens, if you take them out and you show them how to pick the nettle and have them steam it, they usually love it. They eat it just because it's so fun and fascinating to them, and the fact that they can get stung from it, you know. So children, I found, really love it. And you cook it like an omelet. My favorite way to cook it is as a spanakopita, you know, Greek spinach pie, and I take the spinach out and I use solid nettle. Or nettle in your omelets, and you know, just nettle soup. And another favorite way is raw nettle pesto. So you take the nettle and you put it in your blender with olive oil and Parmesan and, you know, pine nuts. I don't use them because they're way too expensive, but like cashews or walnuts. And then you just grind all that together. Just follow, and usually I like to put other herbs in there. A little basil is nice, a little parsley, because it's very green. It's almost too green tasting. If you grind it up and cook it and or dry it, you destroy the formic acid. and you can eat it that way. So that's one reason I love it. It's just a great green. And in survival situations, and if you were ever in a survival situation, then you can eat the plant at any time. You wouldn't just go and try to pick the fresh young tops. But the reason it's recommended not to eat the leaves when the plant has gone into flower is the mineral content is so rich that it can be irritating to your kidneys. It's so rich in minerals. And if you dry this, if you put this in a dryer and you dehydrate it, and then powder the nettles, it tastes like salt because of the minerals in there. It actually tastes like green salt. It's so mineral rich. It is hard to get good minerals. These are all biochelated. They're all assimilated by our body readily. So this plant is high in calcium, high in iron, very, very high in calcium and iron, and very high in trace minerals and salts and protein. So you have just an incredible foraging plant here. But also as a medicine, it's really one of the main medicines we have for the reproductive system of men and women. It's like a foundational herb that we use. So many issues center in the reproductive issues, men and women. This is a really great herb. It's also a major herb for the respiratory system and the liver, which liver and digestion are the same. So really, for several major organ systems, this herb is a protocol. It's part of the protocols that we use. So really great herb. When I got there, I was really hungry. I hadn't eaten much, and I noticed she had a great big nettle patch, of course. She was an herbalist in her backyard. She also had a basket and gathering gloves. So I went out to collect my dinner, right? And I got the basket and the gloves and the scissors that she had, and I started picking. It was really very holy. It was a beautiful time of evening, and I was out there doing what I love doing. I was picking my dinner, and I literally, and I had my gloves on and the scissors, and I literally, really honestly, I heard the plant say, "Take your gloves off." And I'm looking at this plant going, it was like a comedy, right? I was looking at a comic book. I looked at the plant and said, "No way." "No way, Jose. I'm not taking my gloves off." And then I heard it again, and I did take my gloves off, and I started picking with my bare hands. And that's where I learned. After I picked for a while, my hands stopped hurting, actually. And today, I can actually still do that. I can kind of like pick, and, I just learned, and I teach my students this too, if you go respectfully, and you kind of like just are really conscious, you can actually pick. But whenever I'm going out to pick a whole lot, I take my scissors and gloves, but I can just kind of pick. But so I don't want you to try that. No. But I just wanted to say that, it's like developing relationships. You might marry a prickly old guy and you just love him up and feed him well, turns really sweet. You handle him like gently and nicely. It turns out to be a pretty nice guy after all. Our mother taught us that. Of course, our dad was ultra sweet. But anyway, I've been doing that with my husband for a long time. He's very sweet. He wasn't so sweet at first, though. He tried to cut my nettle patch down. It was like, no way. Anyway, and the other plant I wanted to mention to you is horsetail. So this grows, again, we won't find this up here unless there's a lot of water. It's always growing near water, ditches, stream banks, anywhere where there's water runoff. And horsetail, so our friend Doug Dewar also mentions this as a wild edible, and it's not really very delicious. It's the fertile part of the plant that comes up first. It comes up just kind of like an asparagus, and it's very bland and mild, but you can eat it, if you want. I might eat it once just to try it. You bring it up and steam it, cook it, you can eat it raw, but really it's very not tasty. Fibery, and it has strings hanging from your teeth, so survival food, yes, but thriving food, no. But what it is just excellent medicine, and I do like you to know that. It is a really excellent medicine for wound healing. So if you get a really bad wound, you can make poultices, and poultices would be like chopping this up. You always have to chop your herbs up so the juices are so it's not encased in its skin. You have to chop it up and pour a little boiling water, and you make it like a mash with it. So it's like kind of mashy. You can put it in your blender even with some boiling water and just blend it really quickly so you have a mash. And you put that on a big infection or an open wound, and it will really heal it really much faster. It helps to draw out the infection. Also, this plant is extremely high in silica. So silica is good for what? Nails, hair, bones, joints, and tissue and ligaments. So it's almost always combined with high calcium herbs and formulas for people who have weak bones and nails, etc. I've been using a lot of this plant along with comfrey, which is very controversial right now. Not a lot of people use comfrey anymore. I still do use it, but it is controversial. But old-fashioned remedy was horsetail and comfrey, and combined with other, maybe a little mint or whatever to make it taste really good. But so for wound healing, for hair, for nails, for skin, this is just a great herb. And then the other thing I just like to point out, and this is the stage we use it, this is the part we use. We use the infertile part that comes up after the initial fertile part comes. In biology, they call the male and female, they call it primitive reproduction, which I think is really funny. So most plants self-pollinate, and they call that more advanced pollination, but in the plants they call, when you have a male and a female part, they call it a primitive. I just thought that was kind of funny. I can tell you don't, so that's all right. It's okay, you don't have to follow my humor. But when you talk all day for 2 days, you have to entertain yourself, right? So just be easy on me. Anyway, but one of the things I do want to point out, this herb is really common, but it's one of the herbs I suggest don't ever buying, because you have to pick it at the right time. You have to pick it so it has nothing to do with size. It has to do with the age of the plant, and you can tell when it's ready to pick when these little horsetails are going upwards. All of these, I would say, are past because they're kind of outwards. Do you see this? They're more outward on the plant. So when it's first young and fresh, it's going upwards like this. And that's when you want to pick it, because when it goes out like this, I should clarify that you would want to pick it when it's up like this for internal use, because if you get it when it's out like this, then what happens is the silica is so strongly concentrated in it that it scours your bladder and your urinary tract, and it can be very, very irritating for your bladder and urinary tract. When it's going up, it's totally great for your bladder and urinary. It's actually used for bladder problems. But when the silica is really strong in it, it can be very irritating to your system. So I never buy this. I always harvest my own, because I don't know if they know that or how they're picking it. When it's out like this, the silica is really strong in it. So for external purposes, it's great. Making hair rinses so you have thick, long hair and brown when you're 70. That came out of a box, so that's not the silica. So just to remember that. So the silica is really fine when it's out like this. It's great. And that's also why it's called scouring rush. That's another name for it, because for backpackers who like to camp, this makes the best, if you forget your Brillo pad, this makes a really great, you know that, right? This makes a really, really great cleanser for your pots and pans. And I did read in Doug Dewar's book, he said that fine woodworkers, when they need really fine sandpaper, this I don't know, but he said they use this. Kind of hard to believe, but they'll use this as a little scouring, like a sandpaper, a very fine one. So lots and lots of great uses for these plants, and now we need to walk.
General rule is don't pick the roots when the plant's in flower, because all the energy, the nutrients, have moved to the flower. But in this case, this flower is just opening, it hasn't gone to seed, it hasn't made a lot of flowers. That root's great down there. Oh, yum. I'm drooling thinking. So you just steam it, you cook it. So, learning to recognize it, its features, it's a composite, it has that composite flower. These little white things that you see there, those are just those, I don't know what those are actually. I thought they were those little stink bugs. I don't know what that is, but anyway.
So it's just the root you eat of that?
Yeah, it's just the root. You could probably eat the leaves too if you were hungry, but it's usually the root part that's used. So when you're driving here and driving home, you see fields of this. So this is your indication of there was a field of mullein here. What I've learned is where I see these, so as a wildcrafter, I'm always looking to see, can I go back and harvest this the next year? So I would see these fields of mullein, but if I go back the next year, there's no mullein there. I have to wait 2 full cycles. So mullein is a biennial, both when it comes up and also when it goes down. you generally will not find another field of mullein the following year. You might find a few stray ones, but you're not going to find a huge field. This is an incredible plant. Again, if we were looking top 10 plants, this would be one of the plants you'd want to know. It is a weedy plant for certain. Honey, would you hold that little bouquet for me? Thank you. What's your name?
Neve.
Neve. Okay, thank you. This is precious. You hold on to those. All right, so this, for many of you, this is a weedy plant, right? But for herbalists, and it's really one of the more valuable plants. And it's so there's no counterindications, which means that we don't have warnings about it. You don't have to worry about using, counterindications if you use it with medicine or whatever.
Or drug interactions.
No interactions, that's right. And the whole plant is used, so we use the leaves the first year. So this little rosette, which you may not see down here, is a first year mullein that's just growing. These are used for any kind of cough and respiratory issues. These can be used as preventatives. So if you have long-term respiratory issues, if you have asthma and allergies and you get a lot of congestion, these can be used as a tonic long-term, and they also are really excellent for acute situations as well. So we use them both as a preventative and as medicine. Right. They're also really excellent if you're a backpacker. It's the nicest, softest, compostable toilet paper you can get. Though I do want to do a little warnings. I've told that to people for years, and there are people, those little hairs can be very sensitive on their buns. So there are people who get like a rash from using it. I just feel I should pass that on.
So it's not a baby wipe.
Yeah, I wouldn't baby wipe it. I mean, that's all you have, do it. It's also an incredible poultice herb. So again, antimicrobial, antibacterial, does the same thing in our lungs. So I wouldn't call it a food necessarily. I mean, you could eat this. It's not toxic, but I consider it more of an herbal medicine. Then when this is flowering, it puts out small flowers up the stalk. It never flowers all at once. You get small flowers that come up. And those flowers are one of the most powerful anodynes that we have as herbalists. And anodyne means it really helps with pain. It helps relieve pain. And it's especially an old-fashioned remedy that I want to say works incredibly for ear infections that are, this is very important, for ear infections that are due to congestion. So like you have an ear infection because you have a cold, you have excess mucus in your body. It is not ever good to put oil in your ear if you have swimmer's ear, water in your ear. It will just make it worse. And also, if you suspect that the ear is perforated, you have a really bad ear infection that is going to possibly be damaging, I would not put oil in it. But so for the child who wakes up at night and they have an ear infection, they're so soothing. I'm really literally a few drops warm oil in the ear, like mother's milk warm, dropped in the ear, mullein flower oil is unbelievable. It's like a famous remedy for it. It just, so it not only helps with the pain, it also is a natural antiseptic, a natural antibacterial agent, so it's fighting the infection. I have friends who make gallons and gallons of mullein flower oil and just sell it all across the country because it's quite a popular remedy. You can use it topically, as an anodyne, but mostly it's that really famous for ear infections. And just for those of you who get into this, mullein flower is often mixed with St. John's wort oil and oftentimes mixed with garlic oil. So all of those are remedies that are used together, but even just the mullein flower by itself. Mullein also colonizes the bad soil. So you see it taking over in really bad soil. It will grow really profusely and it helps to rehabilitate the soil. So these plants are acting as healers for the earth, just like they're acting as healers for us. So this plant actually, if you just let it grow in bad soil, it will help to rehabilitate that soil. You could eat it and get away with it out being bitter, but it gets bitter pretty quickly. So I call it more of a medicinal. You can definitely eat it, but I call it more of a medicinal. It has a white milky latex. It's more, that white milky latex will always be more prominent on a hot sunny day. So you can see it. Okay, very, very, very important plant. All right, so this is one of the strongest herbal nervines that we have, and it was used by the pharmaceutical industry when opium became illegal. they actually would take huge quantities of this plant and press out the white milky latex and use it like an opium substitute without the addictive property. So very, very powerful plant. It's an anodyne, it's a nervine, and a sedative.
Mostly what I love doing is sharing with people this knowledge and really reminding people that this is our heritage, that it was that everybody used herbal medicine at one time. It was part of what we did, like growing food and getting together for potlucks. So people just made herbal medicine and they shared with one another, and it's so beautiful to see that tradition happening again. I like to remind us in America that actually it's only been a few years since really right after World War II that herbalism went deeply underground in this country. In most other parts of the world, it continued to flourish. But in America, like so many of the natural things, eating healthily, taking good care of our land, a lot of the crafts that people did, like knitting and crocheting and all that, just fell out of use and people weren't doing it anymore. And really some of those things were the best of what we are, like they really were really great skills for us to know, and to lose those and then to make some of them like completely, people like with herbalism it was passed around that this was antiquated and didn't work. And I would just scratch my head and think, have people even tried herbs? I mean, like, why don't you just take a cup of Cascara Sagrada and tell me that herbs don't work, Cascara Sagrada is a laxative, and one cup of it will send you to the toilet. It's like many, many times. Or how about just even a few grains of cayenne, which is a very important medicinal plant, and all of a sudden, you're choking from the heat and catarrh's running and your bowels are, the herbs have been so potent. And they work very differently than modern medicine. Our modern medicine, our allopathic medicine, is also an incredible system and has done much to save people's lives. The only problem with it is it disempowers people, right? Like we were taught that the doctor knows best about your human body, and they do know a lot. They're trained, and they train sometimes for 12 years and longer, and many of them work a long time and are very dedicated to healing. So I never like to put down any of our traditional healing methods or our modern healing methods, but really when it comes to making decisions about your body and what your body needs, really nobody knows better than you do what your body needs. You might need guidance and help, which is why we have herbalists and doctors and naturopaths and therapists that we go to, but you are the final decision maker about your body. And so it's that the disempowerment that we had, I felt, was harmful for us as a nation, and also the fact that the world's oldest healing tradition. Oh, bless my little sister's heart. Thank you, Betty. Put these down. This is my younger sister, Betty, and my older sister, Diane. I'm so honored to have them here with us. They'll be helping me out in this class. So, no, but I think Larry. No, I think they went. I think they went to try to find that for us.
All right, guys, I'm going to wrap this up. I am about to start a basic herbalism class with Rosemary, and it'll be the last class of the day. So I'm going to go soak in just as much information as I can. Thanks for hanging out with me today. See you guys next time.